Okay, so you should be live now.
Hey, we're live on Facebook. It's Brook. I hope you've got some popcorn because this will be boring.
And if you
I have to learn how to use this thing because I'll be all by my lonesome. Dave's leaving.
If you want to zoom in, like for instance, if you wanted to zoom in on this camera, you pinch down here, and that's your.
Okay.
So now we've just zoomed in on the camera.
I want to zoom in on my face.
Yep, see, now you're zoomed into you. And if you want to
How do I see it on this?
For this.
Do I got to go to the thing?
Yeah, you're going to go to Printrbot.
So I'm going to be building, or at least fixing, an old printer I found out in the shop and give it to a friend who happens to be blind, legally blind. He sees shadows. I mentioned him on Facebook, or I mean on Twitter. So I'm going to be building...
Whoops, there we go.
Lag in audio. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. And I will not feel bad if you don't stick around. There's nobody in there right now, is there?
There look like you got 5 or 6 people watching.
Oh, there are 5 or 6 people.
Yeah, so
this will be fun.
How many people are watching?
Hey!
This is where I get questions. So you can answer on here, or you can just scroll through and read the
Okay, this is kind of fun.
Yeah,
I'm at the helm.
Yep, you're the owner.
Look out, world. Okay. I'm driving. All right.
I feel good about this. You're going to do
Oh, Dave. This is a good time. Here's what I like about doing a show today, or like what would we call this?
A live broadcast.
Just a live broadcast, is because I just wanted to, and so I did. That's technology, folks.
Yeah. All right, have a good night.
All right, so I'm not going to be able to watch this. Welcome, everyone. See you, Dave.
You won't see it in real time. You'll have to look at your phone to monitor what.
I will?
Yeah, and you see this.
Oh, look at that.
You can see what your view is, and then also these little tiles.
That is just far too much.
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
What?
That's what's on air.
Okay.
So.
Oh, the different shots. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I don't really.
It's probably going to be a fairly static camera.
Right. That's your best approach. Good luck.
See you later. All right, folks. Well, I could probably get sucked into answering a bunch of questions, but I want to get started with what I'm doing here. I'm just having some fun today working on an old printer. So let's see. Impromptu broadcast. Yes. Nice tools. Woohoo. How's the new play coming along? I got so many projects going. I haven't touched the new play in a couple of days. Hello, Sean Wood. Diego Martins. How do you say that? Vishal Pai? Gabriel Medina Diago Martins. Christopher Sweeney, Afro 3D printer. Oh, I've seen you on Twitter. And Dale. And maybe there'll be more. New react to a comment. Oh, Jonathan Cross. Hello, how are you? All right, guys. So I'm just going to be digging in an old box of stuff. And I will look down. There's no one here to remind me to watch what's going on with the thread here. So talk amongst yourselves. Let's put this over here. I got plenty of battery there. I don't know how much battery I have on my phone. But anyway, so I'll probably have to grab tools and stuff, but I want to show you what I'm doing. I've got an old box of junk over here. It's so old, it fell apart when I picked it up. So I just thought I would take a little trip down memory lane. Look at some of this stuff. Look at that. That thing is old. It's all dusty. This was the original Printrbot. I have one sitting back here that's all nice and done up, and I pretend like this one is the first one I built. It's not. I don't even know when I built that. But this was an earlier one. This goes back all the way to probably 2011, maybe 2012, probably 2012. There used to be there's actually a Maker Award on this. Maker Faire, Editor's Choice, 2013, New York. That's pretty cool. 9/22/13. It wasn't this printer. It was probably this one. But anyway, they gave me an award in New York. I remember that because Prussia came up to me. I think that was the year. And I got to meet Prussia, and he showed me his new printer. And look, this is so old. It's 3mm filament still stuck in here. Hilarious. So anyway, I'm not going to do anything with this right now. I might drag some of these out, but it's just funny to see. We were shipping this with glass, so it has glass on the top. There is a heat bed. It actually says PB50 on it. Because, what is that? Because we had a bot farm set up to do the Kickstarter. And man, I'm surprised if we had 50. I don't think we had 50. Maybe we did. I don't remember. This is mostly hardware store parts. This, like I said, the original Kickstarter stuff. And so you see some hacks that I'm frankly kind of ashamed of now. All ABS. Look at the bottom here. Old printer board. Can't even read it. So dusty. Rev B. And there's some dodgy soldering going on here. It'd be hilarious to see if that worked. But the good old Ubis ceramic, I bet you that works. These were XL belts, the printed gears. We printed, I say gears, drive gear for the belt, or the belt pulley is printed. Drive gears are printed. I probably made that. Remember those old hobbed bolts? This is just a bolt that you could make a jig. I made a jig. Oh my gosh. This is pretty bad. This has been hacked. Anyway, don't want to get too sidetracked. That's that. Oh, there's a really old one. Well, let me show you this one first. Hilarious. Why are you guys even watching this? This is funny. Let me see if anybody's commenting. Nope. Okay. So this is another old Printrbot. I think this one goes back to, because I don't recognize the hack on this one. Some glue or something. But I think this one was one of the original ones that I gave to, because this is a really old style Ubis. The tip is made from a nut, like an acorn nut put on a lathe, probably hand drilled by Carl back in the day. But anyway, these I did give my meetup group before I did the Kickstarter. We were making these, and I maxed up all my credit cards, and I bought all the parts, and I gave them away to testers. And this one, I said you can either buy it or you can just return it, when you're done. So this lady or guy, lady, long story. She had, I call her she had this one and didn't return it, and she was dogging me online, and I was like, all I ever did was give you stuff, and so she felt bad, apologized, and brought it back to me, and so it's been laying in a box. Anyway, that's an early one. Not a bot farm bot, one that was used by one of the original meetup groups persons. But anyway, that's that one. And then this one is actually one of the early models that I did. You can see two different colors, filament. A design that never saw the light of day. I thought this was going to be the one because it was like this snap fit deal that I was doing. And this is an early prototype that I didn't end up using, but this has to be 2010, or maybe it was 11. I don't know. It all runs together. But anyway, I don't even know why I still have that. But probably in my garage for a long time, and I brought it in. I think it was in my drawer for a while. Anyway, so these are old. This is the old box of junk. I did a lot of, I sold off a bunch of equipment. I sold my pick and place. I created a lot of space, and I started going through my shelves like, why do I have this? And I threw so much stuff out. But some stuff you're emotionally attached to. Okay, so this is, this was a design that I did, but back at the same time. This was probably printed on a MakerBot. It might have been printed on the Prusa. No, this was printed on the what was that called? It's that printer right there. The anyway, an early Prusa Mendel, and this was the beginning of how I wanted to know how small I can make a printer. I made the original Printrbot, but I wanted one that was like tiny and you could put in a backpack so kids could take it to school. So I made this one-piece design for the Z and the X, kind of using the same methodology that I did with the original Printrbot on the Y bed. You use 2 pulleys and a drive gear, and then you pull it back and forth and it rides on the bearings. So I thought, it just fascinated me. It was so small. Well, this ended up becoming, that was printable. I thought I was going to make the whole thing printable. That ended up becoming this later. So it's basically the same, but instead of keeping this flat, I rotated the motor and I made it a little taller. It was just so much easier to deal with the belt. The bed was up really high. I wanted the bed to be low to the ground. So I even have models of these that it's even lower than this. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with small, but anyway, so that was the original prototype. Probably led to the Junior first, and then eventually the Simple. And that actually brings us to what I'm here to do. I had a guy, I've told the story, but I'll tell it real quick. A guy I met at Murph that was, he just heard me talking to somebody, and he came up, and he had a white cane, and so I knew he was blind, or at least impaired, sight impaired. And so he recognized my voice, I guess, but I asked him, how do you know it was me? And I asked him, can you see very well? And he says, I see shadows and stuff. He recognized the shadow outline of my beard. So anyway, I told the story on Twitter, but really nice guy. His name's Jacob. And he ordered, back in the day, I forget what model, I think it was a 1405. It was a wooden Simple with the belts. I did fishing line to begin with, and I think that's what I have here, actually. But anyway, so he said, do you have any more of those? And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I know I disassembled a bunch of returns and just throw them away because they were pretty thrashed. But I had a hackerspace give me back some printers. I'm always giving the local hackerspaces stuff. And sometimes I just ask them, if you're not using it, give it to a kid or something, or bring it back to me so I can give it away again. So that's why I keep this junk around it, because eventually it gets to go out to somebody. So let me get them out. So I have 2. Yeah, these are the fishing line. Here, let me zoom up a little bit. I'm only at 5'9", but I don't want the top of my head cut off. So they had these. Might not have been a hackerspace. It might have been some Berkeley students. What is that? I have no idea what's going on there. We made it, but I have no idea. Anyway, they had these. I was giving them some stuff, and so when we did the Adopt-A-Bot, and they came up to help. That's what it was. They came up to help, and they brought a big bag of junk. And I says, yeah, sure, I'll take it. So check these out. This one, oh yeah, this one has belts. Good. So this is the one I'll try to get running. It looks like it's missing some parts. No, it has this. That's good. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can get this running. I have the power. So, oh goodness, look at all this masking tape. Yikes. Now Jacob asked for one of these kits because it was his first. He asked for a kit, but I don't like sending stuff that I don't know if it works or not. I doubt it's ever going to be used to print, but he wants to put it on his shelf because it changed his life, he said. And I said, how did it change your life? And he said, well, I got into it. I was able to build it, and I got obsessed with 3D printing, and I just learned more and more and more about it. He must have some site, so if he's using a 3D printer, obviously. But it got him a job, and so he got a job doing something, printing something for a lab or something, and then it led to another job. Then he was working for a museum that was doing 3D printed items to be used in a tour for the impaired, the accessible. It was like an accessible tour. So I'm not exactly sure what it entailed. He didn't give me details, but really neat kid. And now he's working with kids, and he's teaching kids how to 3D print. And so he just really was stuck on, he kept asking me, do you have one? And then he even emailed me, which is no problem. I don't mind. But I thought, you know what, if I just don't just look around the shop. So I came in this weekend, and I looked around the shop, and I found this box in my pile of junk. And so I thought I would, let's see. I thought I would just see if I can get this running and then send it to him. At least if it's running, I know all the parts are here, right? Man, this is a mess. Sometimes I wonder, you know, there are people that are doing 3D printing that maybe should not be doing 3D printing because they just thrashed these. This is the old fishing line. This used Kevlar string for belts, and you know, it's funny. I'm glad I did it because it was, you know, it was really cheap, and a lot of people. I've even talked to people recently that still use this. Oh yeah, this guy printed, or girl printed a little hack to tension the string. You know, doing these, I was joking around today because I was designing this morning and just for hours. And I came in and I told Dave, oh, that's horrible. Twisting wires together on an end stop, that will not work. Anyway, I told Dave, you know, man, my brain is like fried. I've been designing all day, and sometimes I go down these rat holes that, you know, take a long time, and then you find out you're going the wrong direction. But he was asking me about, you know, kind of my workflow and stuff. He's learning Fusion 362. And so I shared it with him, and I said, you know what, Dave? It's a good thing I've designed so many really crappy printers because, and, you know, I'm not saying that these are totally crappy. They did work, but, you know, they were early on in the life of 3D printing hobby. And it forced a lot of people to, well, this doesn't work as good as I'd like it to, so they learned how to design, and they learned to share files, and these printers got better and better and better. So I'm glad that I wasn't perfect the first time out, where there wouldn't be any fun in that. This is one that really got close to my desire to get a really, really short bed. In fact, I wanted to just put a single piece of wood so I could save like those 5 millimeters, but I found out it was kind of flexible, so I put a 90 degree there, and so it's pretty thin there. Man, it's funny that zip ties and cheap bearings and rods, that is so buttery smooth. It's hilarious. Anyway, small little motors. They weren't that powerful, but they're sure powerful enough to move around a very, very light gantry. Still don't know what that is. It's some thingiverse, something or other that I don't even know what it is. Anyway, these will be spare parts if I need something. But let's look at this one. So one thing that a lot of people did with this model was, man, I'm going back on this, so you know what? I was trying to keep it together, but I'm going to be testing this anyway, so we'll just take it all apart. I had the electronics on this actually tucked in because I wanted to save space and keep the wiring nice and neat. But a lot of people just flipped it around on this side so they could get access to it. Not a bad idea. I don't know which I'll do. I'll probably put it on the outside too, just so I can get to it when I'm testing. This was an old ceramic. You know, people started to do the J-head, and there's some other hot ends. And so I asked Carl, because he was making these by hand at the time, and then he got a wiring company to do a bunch of stuff for him. And I said, well, why don't we just use the cartridge? Because these will be cheaper in the long run. You know, let's just use a cheap Chinese cartridge. He hated it, by the way. He did not want to do it. I said, but let's put the cartridge, you know, parallel with the barrel so we can get it nice and close and have all of the heat be close to it. It'll have thermal mass. So he had this aluminum hex rod that they'd machine and just do it the same length of the heater. It was actually a really good hot end. It just would go and go and go. So I'll leave it on just, you know. when I'm giving something away that I know isn't going to get used, I don't mind if it's old stuff. I don't really want to get new stuff off the shelf for a museum piece. But I just don't like bad wiring at all. In fact, I'm tempted to cut all this off and rewire it, but I'll probably just do bundles. Because these wires, these were Kaizen motors, and they came with this real long wire. Really too long because you only need to go a few inches. The Adoptabot, I was working on that this morning. That's what I was doing. It's funny, if you follow the Adoptabot, you know, it was this little project. Me and my wife were donating. You know, I work all the time, and I make the same. So my wife doesn't get paid, but she has some skills here, and she helps me do these Adoptabots. So I just love the fact that they're getting to kids, and you know, printing other printers is still cool, but I don't think necessarily appropriate for, well, I don't want to insult anybody, but I don't have any printers that I use on a day-to-day basis with printed parts. I do them as projects and to try to get the RepRap community engaged. To give them away to people. So that's what Adoptabot is, adoptabot.org. But anyway, it's sort of the great, let's see, there's a junior, the simple, this wooden one, and it changed over to belts, but we'll just leave that as the simple maker's kit. And then, what did we do? We did the simple metal, and then the simple pro. And the simple pro today was, I have a little bitty bot farm that I do parts with, or, you know, prototypes. And that's printing the Adoptabot, which is really the same style gantry, and so that's 5th generation of this style printer. So what is that? If this is me, that's my dad, my grandpa, my great-grandpa, and my great-great. So that's, the Adoptabot is the great-great grandson of, well, this is even before that, but the Junior, I guess, is the first one. Junior had a folding bed, which sounded like a good idea. And if you really wanted to be portable, again, I was always trying to do a printer that would fit in a backpack for a kid. I had kids. I still have kids. But anyway, man, you have got to, when you do extensions, you've got to put some heat shrink on that. It's going to hurt me not to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm going to just save myself some time and try to move quickly. Just get it tested. But anyway, I was doing that Adoptabot today. Why was I telling that story? But this reminds me of it because it's the same orientation of the motors and everything. All right. So I'm going to put this back on now. I don't know why they didn't put it back together. Maybe they lost the parts to it. Oh, that's why. This is not the right piece. This goes to this. Oops. Well, that's gonna throw a wrench in it. Let's see here. I guess I could use this base. The difference between these two were I just redesigned this. These are actually two different printers. I don't know how, if you went through the parts, I don't know if you would know. But I changed the design because I wanted more powerful motors. So this has, I wonder what model this is. Why didn't I put my logo and the model on it? Anyway, this is an earlier model, and it had small little motors, but you know, people started upgrading, you know, making it taller or wider or whatever, and they wanted more powerful motors. And so this was a smaller NEMA 17, and this is a larger NEMA 17. So, oh, and this one has, that's funny. I had a lot of complaints on, hey, it's hard to build. I don't know what part goes which direction, because a lot of these parts are symmetrical. And you could turn them around, but sometimes it looks symmetrical, but when you flipped it, was wrong, and you wouldn't find that out until much later in the build, and then you had to rip it all apart. If you watch my early build videos, I do that constantly. I'm like, oh yeah, oh crap, I did this wrong, I gotta go back, tear it apart. But anyway, so on this model, look at this. I put top, back. I put some instructions on here. So it was really for kids, like over here, SD card, USB, power. I labeled everything. Y, top, back. And so in the build photos, you can see everything I was doing. These both use end stops. This was pre-sensor, before the Z sensor, so we had these long screws. But anyway, you can see the motor is, let's see if I can show you. See how the motor is a little bit smaller here. So this actually has a little bit lower profile. Oh, that's funny. So that's what it was. This actually, I tucked the board underneath. Now I remember. Look how tight that is to be underneath. So I don't really know which one he wants. But this one is the one that may have all the parts. This has a little bit different look too. A flat back. And this one, what happened there? With the string, has a, I added a little bit more on the back here so I could, why did I do that? Not entirely sure, but you can see the extruder is the wooden extruder. I don't remember if Jacob told me. That was crazy design. This is just a stack of wood. It's really a Wade's. No, it's not a Wade's. It's a direct drive. What is that about? They put a screw. I don't know why that screw is there. Huh. Oh, I bet it was a fan or something. It's hilarious. Man, I haven't looked at these designs in so long. Anyway, so these are two different models for sure. And they're not going to be interchangeable in parts. So I need to decide what to do. Well, I guess I could get them both going, but I'll tell you what I'm scared of. What I'm scared of is having to go find the files and recut some of these old files. I mean, that will be a nightmare. Tell you what, I'm going to run out to the shop real quick, and we're going to have a little intermission. And before I go, if you have questions, I can answer a couple of questions. I think I'm on the right place here. Oh, is the top? Oh, I see. The old's at the bottom, new's at the top. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Let me just read some of these. How did the Ubis, this is from Mike. He says, how did the Ubis hot ends come around? I haven't seen any other hot ends like it, even after all these years. Carl, the story, some of you guys have heard this story, but Carl was in my original meetup group. And in fact, Carl Ubis, the guy that designs the hot ends and builds them, I don't do them here. He does them over in Loomis. And he works out of his house. He's got what I call the compound. And he's a funny dude, sort of a tinfoil hat guy. Old engineer. He tells stories about working at HP back in the 70s in the Valley, building calculators, like the $2,000 calculators. He used to go into this one room, he said, when they were starting to build computers, and there was a bunch of Asian women just filled the room, and he was like, what's going on? And they had, I don't even know the right names for this stuff, but they had memory that was, I think it was iron core memory, or maybe it was a magnet, and they needed workers with very small, dexterous hands, and so they only hired these Asian women, and there was just tons of them, and they would loop this wire around the magnet, or the metal, or whatever it was, and that was how they hand-built memory for these computers. He was just fascinated by their work. Anyway, so he tells stories like that, and old school. and he contacted me on an IRC that I was just looking around, and back then, IRC was old by this time. You could have gone to a chat room, but the people that were developing the firmware way back, and they were hacking these machines. They were following what Adrian was doing. You'd find them on an IRC, and we'd just sit there and chat. And I remember Clement was one of the early dudes with the firmware, and he was in the chat room, and I pitched starting a business, and man, he cursed me out, and people just got so mad at me because you shouldn't, this was like this, is going to change the world, and you shouldn't do it for money. I wanted to do it for a living so I could continue to develop stuff, and I had no experience. They didn't believe me, and I kind of got mad and didn't come back for a while. I was more of a lurker after that. I stopped asking questions, but I was just trying to learn from them, like, what is the state of the art? And at the time, it was Sanguine Lalu for the electronics. I have some of those boards, but not here, not in this box. But anyway, so Carl contacted me, and he says, "Oh, you're close. You're the only one on the map." Maybe it was a chat room. I think we must have put in where we lived. And Carl said, "Well, I want to get together. Let's talk on the phone. You got to call me." And so somehow we got each other's number, and he called me, and we talked for hours, and never met him in person. And I said, "Well, I'm going to do a meetup group." He was like, "I can't come to the first one. I'm so mad. I got an appointment." But he showed up for the second one and everyone after that. And when I got to tell one other story about Carl. His desk was just a couple desks down from Steve Wozniak. And so he knew Steve, and he went to the Homebrew Computer Club, and he went all the time. And he saw all of those, legendary, I asked him, "Did you see the Apple One?" And he goes, "I'm sure I did. I remember when Wozniak was showing it." And it was funny because he was so nervous, bad in front of crowds, and it was kind of a bomb. I mean, people weren't that interested at the time. It really took off later. But so he knew Woz. Another story he tells about Woz is he goes, he was kind of shady. And I'm like, "What do you mean shady? I've read his book. I've read all the Steve Jobs books." And he said, "Well, Woz would build all these projects. And if you worked at HP, one of the cool things about HP is they encourage the engineers to be building projects on the side, and they would give you electronic parts. And some of the processors were very expensive. It seems like he said they were hundreds of dollars for just the processor. And we're talking way back in the 80, 88, like before that. Anyway, so he goes, "You remember he was doing a project, and I knew he was building a computer. He was trying to build a computer. And so he got one of those, and he asked the guy that managed the stock of the free giveaway CPUs and stuff. He's like, "What's the limit on these? I mean, how many can I take for free?" And he goes, "Well, are you selling them?" And he goes, No, I'm just building them for my friends and stuff." He goes, "Well, you can take whatever you want." And he was like, "Awesome." So Woz cleaned them out. He took all of them. So he thought, Carl was like, "Well, that kind of made it hard on the other guys to get parts to build stuff." So anyway, Carl was an old dude that had been into electronics for a long time, and he was self-taught engineer. And so he ended up running the failure analysis lab at HP, moved up here to Roseville. Loomis is close. Roseville, Lincoln, Loomis, Rockland, they're all right there. North of Sacramento, right off the 80. Anyway, so he lived locally, and he does a lot of hobbies. And the reason he wanted a 3D printer was he's a beekeeper, and he was keeping his bees. And he told me, it blew my mind when he told me, once you know Carl and hang out with Carl, he does all kinds of crazy stuff that's like really advanced stuff. But, me, I do like a little welding. Like I made a bike car out of a couple of old bicycles, and I was pretty proud of that. But all I had to do was like get a 12-volt motor that was half dead and put 2 car batteries on it, and my kids were driving this car. So I was a maker back then and always have been tinkering the garage. But when he tinkers, he goes crazy. So he built a little computer that would weigh his bees as they entered the hive and exited the hive. So he had this, I think he did it with vision, or I forget how he did it, but he had this thing that would count and weigh the bees in the hive. So he could do that remotely, wireless. And then he wanted to do a remote control lawnmower. So he has a bunch of property. And so he could just sit while he has the little lawnmower. And so he started it, but he needed a case for his electronics that was waterproof. And he didn't want to just buy one off the shelf. He wanted to make one that like had all of the electronics on it, because he designs his own electronics. He does all the software, he writes the code, and then he makes his projects. So anyway, that's Carl. He made he came in and saw the first hot end that I made. It's around here somewhere. I don't know where it is. I made the first hot end for one of my first printers with some air fit nozzles from pneumatic tools and stuff from Harbor Freight. I was just trying to find cheap. So I'd just go to all the stores and I would find the cheapest stuff I could find, whether it was a hobby RC store or, in fact, I ran across some parts today that were from the original thing that I did. I was using rocket, that bronze rocket tube. It fits really nicely over 8mm bar. I was trying to do stuff that you could buy locally. I did start with like English drill rod and that tube. It really was nice motion. But anyway, so I built this crappy hot end and I hadn't got a heater on it yet. I was going to do nichrome wire and wrap it. And he came in and looked at it and he goes, I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And he goes, "I think that's a piece of crap." I was like, "What? I haven't even used it yet, and you say it's crap." He goes, "Oh, that's crap. What did you drill that with? A hand drill?" I was like, "No, I bought a drill press." And I was kind of proud of it, and he just threw me aside and said, and I said, "Okay, can you do any better, Carl?" And he was like, "You're darn straight I can do better than that." And so a couple weeks later, he came back with this beautiful hot end that looked very much like this one. And he liked building. Wait, where'd it go? He liked building with pots, is what he called pots, plain old off the shelf. And I forget where it is. I thought I had one around here, but it was just a brass rod he drilled out and an acorn that he drilled, and then he bought nichrome wire, hand wrapped it. And at the time he didn't have PEEK, so he put fire cement around it and did all the right connectors and leads and stuff. He was really a stickler on these. All of the ratings of the electronics, everything had to be to spec. And so he was not like me, and he's been a good guy to have. So we started there. He liked wrapping the nichrome around the tube because he would wrap it into the grooves of the threaded rod, and that's the way to get the closest to the heat, the closest to the filament. And so, and from there he just started tweaking thousands and thousands of tweaks by now. And the hot ends run like really, really well. The current model is a Ubis 13S, but he's also got the high flow and the high temp. So he's done several models, but you can't really, if you laid out every hot end that went through a change and then was made better, you'd have thousands of hot ends. He estimates he's sold around 70, 80,000 hot ends through me. We made a handshake deal, and I said, "I'll never buy hot ends from anybody else if you never sell them to anybody else." And we shook hands, and that's what we operate on. So anyway, that's Carl. I'm going to go look for a wood part. I'll be right back. All right. Well, no go on the, let's see here. Yeah, I should have been watching this. Anyway, so I couldn't find the part. I'll have to cut it. but I think we could at least get these things moving. So let me see if I can get these things to turn on and move. It'd be cool if we could print. This one has, this must be, man, I don't even have any 3mm filament. I might at my house. So we may have to, let's just see if they move. Oh, I was going to show you this. This was another early model. Again, this experiment and this experiment was the early junior, or the grandfather to the father to the simple. The first time I printed 2 flat pieces. This is probably before I had a laser cutter. And I had the belts. How did I have the belts? The belts would go through here. I used 2. Later I figured out you could use 1 and save yourself 25 cents. But yeah, this was hacked together out of just 2 prints. It looks like a MakerBot print because it's so crappy. But it could be the Prusa. I wasn't the best at, I didn't really tweak out. This is ABS too. I didn't really get into like really fine printing. I just wanted it to print. And so I was pretty happy to just have something that was workable. Anyway, these are old XL belt drive pulley or drive gears or whatever. I have thousands of these. I ordered them from Torque Transmission. It was the first injection molded part I ever ordered, and they were expensive. And the thing that bugged me, really bugged me, they did a 2-part mold, and of course the bottom was fine, and it's true, it runs true, it was perfect, it functioned fine. But I don't know, they put their mold together off center on this top cap. And so when you put these on the lathe, because I've lathed some down, it wobbles. And I'm like, man, I spent a lot of money for a wobbly cap on my Torque Transmission gear. Me off. But anyway, that was early parts, so that's going in the museum. All right, I need a power supply. That'll work. I need to get some power going here. USB cable. Rev D on this one. That's Rev D. I've got so many boards. You know, it's funny that early on, people, you know, customer support is an art. And Dave does customer support, so he deserves everyone's kudos. There's a couple guys we have out in the wild, Ian and Eric. And Heather helps sometimes, I do it. But they did not know if their printer worked or not, a lot of these people early on. And so they would always blame the board. And so many times it would come back, and I always want to figure out, did we screw something up? Because I paid dearly for these boards in a place in Silicon Valley, the Bay Area. Made them as a really high-end place. So I'm like, what are they doing wrong? 9 times out of 10, the board worked fine when I would receive it back. Everybody just thinks it's the board. It's often this crappy wiring that people do, and you get one end stop that breaks a connection, and it'll run in reverse, and it won't home. And you just have to be really methodic when you're troubleshooting. Yeah, stuff can go bad, but we'll see. Now I'll eat my words. I'll turn that on, and it won't work, I bet. All right, I got to find a USB cable. You know what? Instead of digging around here, I got to run to the other room again. Oh, wait. I think there's one here. Yeah. All right. Yeah, kudos to Dave is right. He's awesome. Okay. Let's see if this board works, and then we'll test it out. Oh, now I need power. These took, hey. This is the 4-pin. Now I got to go dig that up. Well, that's part of the deal today, guys. Sorry. I'm not prepared for 2013 printers. Nothing happened. That's okay. I'll be right back. I know where they are. Here's another board. Okay, it just dawned on me that I have one right here. That's what I needed. Man, these bots on the shelf, I constantly strip them when I'm doing something like this of their parts. We had all these 4-pin connectors, and I mean, I had hundreds of them. And then we revved the board to handle more power. Is this on? So are we still live? Okay, yes, we're still live. Well, power's up. I'm embarrassed to say that when I'm doing a quick thing like this, I always use print run because you got an old school guy here. All right, I brought a bunch of parts I don't need. Okay, let's see if it connects. I don't want to waste my time with this board if it doesn't connect. Connects. All right, so with the motors off, don't try this at home, but with the motors off, you can plug these in when the power's on, you know, but if I ruin something, it's my fault. We'll see. Well, that's extruder Y. X. I'll wire them all the same way. They're color-coded, red, green, yellow, blue. So I'll just plug them in the same way. I may have to reverse some depending on which way the belt's wrapped around the... Here's Z. And then E. Okay, let's see if she moves. Homing X. Does work. I don't have the end stops plugged in though. Duh. Ooh, that is a very short wire. X end stop. These are, I forget if they're normally open or normally closed, but end stops either close a connection or open a connection. That's a fan. We only had one fan on these old boards. Rev 6 or Rev F6, we added 2 fans. And these have these analog potentiometers to adjust the, I just leave them 12 o'clock to adjust the power pots. Here's the thermistor. I don't know why Lane was another guy. He designed the board. We were using Sanguina Lalus, and then Steph was a meetup person. She was working on the Teensy and called it the Teensy Loo. She really loved PJRC and the Teensy stuff. We still use Teensy to this day. But she liked it because you didn't have to put that FTDI chip on the Sanguina Lalu like the Sanguina Lalu had. So you get these weird FTDI errors, USB. And this AT90, this Atmel, what is it? I can't quite see it. Anyway, it was the blah, blah, blah USB 90 or something like that. So it had the FTDI on the chip. Well, you run a fan backwards, you can blow up your FTDI channel. So we suffered from that when people would plug in their fan backwards. We didn't have a protection circuit on it. We added that later too. But Lane was the guy that designed this board. His name is on all the boards. And he's still a friend. He's still around here. He does stuff for, just we talk sometimes on text. But he did a great job. It's such a small board. He changed over to digital pots. He was the first one, me and him, to figure out on this wood bot, the Z sensor. Not the first one to do it, the first one to ship a printer with it. And so everybody followed suit. All right, end stops. All right, this one is Y. It's funny, we had stuff on this board because Lane thought it was cool. Later, I just had this realization, wait a minute, I'm spending money for all of this stuff. I don't want all that stuff on there. I've given away so many dollars over the years. We had this E-stop on here. I don't even know what it does. I mean, he put it on there. He said, well, if people want to use it. Okay. What was the other stuff? The ICSP, we put headers on. The EXP1 and 2, we put headers on. Originally, I mean, it still works. Our firmware still works with the LCD. You can even get cheap Chinese LCD. The 20 character by 4 character thing. You can get that working. Now this is weird because I haven't used a Z end stop in years. Okay, so it works. It was actually running the wrong direction, so I'll go motors off on X and I'll just flip it. You can just rotate these black, they don't have like the fitment on a Molex that normally locks it into place only one direction. I kind of like these Kaisens because you can just flip them. Let me try it again. I'll move this. See what's going on. So it worked. X worked. Let's try Y. By the way, that sound doesn't hurt anything. It's there's no gears in a stepper. It just sounds really bad. What you're hearing is it's like letting go of that, just bumping up against the end. It can't go any further, and so you hear this terrible sound. Some people freak out, but I kind of have learned to like it because I'm like, hey, it'll stop in a minute. I'm going to flip that motor too. These probably all need to be flipped. Oop. Motor's off. By the way, unplug your board before you flip your motors. Lane always would tell me, never move an axis like this and never flip a motor when it's on. I do both. I've fried some boards in my day. I'm going to do X again. Oh, see, by me doing that, I bet I just screwed it up. Let me see. It disconnected. Go port. Nope. There it goes. Yeah, when you do that, it doesn't like it. Okay, here we go. X homed. Y homed. Sure enough, it's the wrong way. Motor's off. Well, I'm glad I chose the exact wrong way on every single one. I'm going to take a guess and see if E is going the wrong way. 2. Okay, X. Y. Where's Z? Z. This has the spring coupler on it. Pretty much any coupler will work. These are 1/4-inch Acme rods. There we go. 1/4-inch Acme rods. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm probably not even going to look for this file. I'm probably just going to design it. That'll be a lot faster. Anyway, to adjust this Z height, it looks a little bit, well, you know what? All of this needs to be tightened up. So I'm going to go through and probably either just tighten some of these zip ties because they're poorly installed. And I'll get a bunch of zip ties and I'll just replace some and then I'll yap some more. That'd be a good time to ask questions. But it looks like the whole thing's working. Let's see if the fan goes. Where's the fan button? There it is. Yeah, the fan works. Can't believe I didn't put a fan shroud on these old bots. It was hard to figure that out with wood. So that's a printed item. But I probably won't even bother since, again, he probably won't even use this. But let's see if it heats up. Okay. Now, where am I going to get 3mm filament? You know what? I'll probably just put some 1.75 down there to kind of clean out, or at least see if it's heating. Check my connections. Everything looks right. It is reading, the thermistor's reading, but I do not, oh, wait, maybe it is heating up. Yeah, oh good, it's heating. Okay, cool. Where do I get 3mm filament? I think I gave it all to Carl. Carl's a pack rat. God love him. He loves everything I give him. And if I got tired of 3mm filament and I said, Carl, you want any? And he's like, yep. I said, how much do you want? All of it. So I gave him all of it. It was a lot. And over the years, he makes fixtures and stuff. And I gave him a filament maker. I got one off Kickstarter. It was probably $1,000 or something. It didn't work so great, but he knew what to do. You know, he knows how to work with heat and filament. So he actually contacted the company. He was like, hey, I know what's wrong with your filament maker. You got some firmware issues. And he was trying to help him, but I don't know that they wanted help. I think they were a little nervous that the guy that makes hot ends for Printrbot was trying to help them with their, I don't know what, but they wouldn't give the code away. And he thought it was a shame because it had these old V1. I'm trying to do this backwards. Normally I wouldn't do this. These old V1s were kind of sloppy. I mean, they started out as a 3mm filament machine, and you know, we put smaller holes in it and the smaller brass bar. But then flexible filament got to be popular, and we tightened up those tolerances and did the Alu V2, which remains to be a favorite of mine. Oh man, it's not hot yet. I was just seeing if it would push. And it's getting hot. What's weird is I don't see the temperature rising yet. So we may have a bad thermistor. This early firmware, I don't really trust it to. Here, I'm going to take this off. You know, the runaway, what do they call that? Watchdog, or I forget. Here, I'll pop back and see if you guys have any questions. So if you got a question, ask it now. I'm only going to read the top. It used 3mm. I thought it used 1.75. Well, the early ones it was a choice. You could get 3mm stuff from me. Something stinks. I think it's getting to heating temperature now. See if I can do this without burning myself. But oddly, I don't see a temperature. Yeah, there's no reading. So this is just going to run away if I don't stop it. But I thought while it was warm, I'd try to push some out. There it is. So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that these had 3mm to begin with, or could be retrofitted, because some people just had 3mm filament. So all the red or orange, Chinese red, is out, and it's working great. It's flowing good. So I'm going to pull it out. It's nice and clean. So excellent. Okay, the hot end works. The thermistor does not. So I'm going to turn it off and grab a thermistor and see if I can just stick one in there. Heater off, and I'll get a thermistor. One of the things I did when I was cleaning, anytime I see a hot end that's a stray hot end, I grab it and I throw it in this bin. Here's an old one. No, that is a 1.75. So I think it was just that we were making this hole too big. It seems like it's been drilled out. Yeah, you're right. That's a 1.75. Now this particular hot end, ooh, it's nice and warm. It had, some of these early ones, they had the thermistor was put in with a little Teflon tape, and you can actually pull it out. See that? Oh, by the way, if you have a question, I keep saying that, but let me go back. Okay. If you have a question, ask it. I'm watching the top. So I'm going to see if I can just pull this out and replace the thermistor. Well, you know what? I could see if the wire's bad first. Let me see if this one works before I install it. So I'm just going to hold it up against there. See if I can get a reading. Okay, it's connect. Oh, that's getting hot. Yikes. I knew it would, but I didn't think it would so quickly. Huh. So now I'm wondering if it has the wrong lookup table. Or maybe it's just the wire. Yeah. It is definitely... Oh, wait, there it is. Why in the smalls never print time didn't match? Has something to have more precise? Why in the smalls, I assume he's meaning to say, does the print time didn't match, has something to have... Okay, so I think he's asking why the estimated print time doesn't match the actual print time. In the smalls, we enabled acceleration, and we wanted it to move around corners slowly, so it slows down on a corner and then goes around. So that you can disable. It's like jerk and acceleration, kind of the same thing. But we did that so it wouldn't jerk around. It's a very small printer. I mean, these guys are smalls. So you can disable that, and it'll be a little more accurate because the slicing software doesn't know you have acceleration turned on. So it assumes a fairly constant speed. I say fairly, it might assume totally constant speed. And so it does an estimation based on, Marlin used to do some really bad estimations of the time that a print would take. It would do things like, better turn this off. It would do things like, it's this many line numbers, and so let's just make an assumption that it's going to take this long based on the line numbers. That's not exactly right, but that's the gist of some of the bad things in Marlin. So when Gina was writing Octoprint, I was talking with her and following her very closely when she was doing Octoprint. And I guess this could be the board isn't reading the thermistor. But she used to complain that it was just such a bad... You know what? There's corrosion on this. She said it's so hard to accurately predict how long a print is going to take. And she did a bunch of stuff to really try and improve that. Very difficult. But that's why the smalls is so slow. Okay, I'm going to try this again. So yeah, it doesn't want to read. So I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me see if I can get Rev D. I'm going to see if the firmware is the problem. Ooh, I better get Rev D though. Go to github.com/Printrbot. Like I said, I haven't done Rev D in a very long time. We have 2 firmware updaters. Are you updating a Printrbot Junior? No. Let's try this again. What if I said yes? It's not working. Let me just find it. So I went to github.com/Printrbot/Marlin, and then if you go to the releases, there's all of the releases. Is there a possibility of possibly getting this monster by next Wednesday? What? I'm doing a demo. Whoop. Lost it. I'll read that in a second. Okay. All right, here's the old stuff. Man, this goes way back. I gotta go. I'm reading through all of the different versions of the firmware, just the descriptions. Okay. That's what I want. I'm going to go all the way back to Unified V2. See what happens. And we do post these hex files, the source code's here too. But I just need a hex. Now we have two firmware updaters. They both work. One works. You can also do Atmel flip on a Windows PC. I got a Mac. Okay, there it is. Let's do that. Connect the Printrbot to your computer using USB cable. Next. Connect power to the Printrbot and ensure it's on. It's on. Probably should disconnect from that. Okay. Okay, it is on. Next. If the printer board is revision C or earlier, then please remove the jumper. C or earlier. This is D. If it is a D, place a jumper. I'm not going to do a jumper. I'm going to do a pair of pliers. Across the jumper. Next. Press the reset button. Duh. Erasing existing firmware, flashing new firmware. Success! All right. This will tell us if it wasn't reading because of a bad firmware. I kind of doubt it's the firmware. I think it might be that. Oh, I could test this. I just realized I'm only using the. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Hold on. I had the thermistor plugged into the fan. That's brilliant. Okay, let's try that again. But not the whole time, just this last time. Okay, it's connected. Let's see if it runs backwards. No, it runs the same way. X, Y, Z. Still 2. I need to raise that. Just raise this real quick. Okay. Now let's set the temperature. Hey, it's working. I guess it was firmware. Okay, so that is working. The thermistor you can unplug while it's on. It's not going to hurt it. So where'd the other end go? Good, still reading. So everything's good. It was the firmware. So again, there's an example of somebody brought this in, couldn't get it to work. All I had to do is reflash the firmware. All right, so while that is heating, I will start to make sense of. Ooh, I need zip ties. Okay. Back to... I habitually keep my grip on the power cable during Z-homing. I hear you. Let's see. I don't think Brooke has realized it's you yet, Jacob. Oh, Jacob's here? Yeah, that's Jacob. Hey, man. I told the story about you. I hope I was pretty accurate. I kind of fudged. I couldn't remember all the jobs that you were talking to me about. But, yeah, this is going to be yours. But I'm starting to get a little bit feel like, what if it's not the exact model? Would this be okay? I hope it is. It is working. It's a little bit dusty, but I hope that's okay. If you got anything to say, I don't, I had this other version too, Jacob, and it was shorter and had the electronics on the side. So I guess you could answer that. Were the electronics on the side or were they underneath on the bottom? I guess I could get that one and make sure all the parts are together. I do have all the wood pieces for that one. But did you have a wood extruder? Sorry. So there's one model with electronics that are tucked underneath here, a wooden model. This wooden model had strings. I don't think you had the one with strings. And the electronics were on the side. So I'm betting that this one is the one that you had, the one with the electronics underneath. That's the one I'm working on. It's missing one wood piece, but I think I can manage that. And everything works on it. So I'm hoping for, oh good, yes, okay. Oh, you said electronics on the side? So I don't know what you said yes to. Oh, it's Brooks, what link? Oh wait, yeah, he did have a link in Twitter or something. But did he leave one here? All right, somebody take the lead here and tell me, is the one I'm working on going to be okay, Jacob? This one has electronics underneath on the bottom. I'm happy to transfer all that stuff over to this other bot, though. This other bot has the electronics on the side. So side or underneath? Send me the belt one, though. Oh, I had the strings. Okay, you had the strings. All right, you had the strings, but I'm sending the belt one. Great. So I'm going to grab zip ties. I'll be back. All right, I got smart. Well, not really. And I brought the cart in. The guys that build, they have these little packs. I bought them. And they have basically everything you'd ever need to put together a Printrbot in one little bag. So my favorite tool, the $2, the cutters is what we call them. All right. Well, I'm stoked you're here, Jacob. So, hey, do you mind me asking, so when I tell the story to people, I know you have some sight because you're able to identify me, and I don't know if you're just, if it's like a tunnel or, I know it's kind of a sensitive question, but it'd be interesting for people to know, how are you doing 3D printing if you have an impairment in your sight? Can you tell us that? All right, I'm going to not be watching the screen. I'm going through now, and I'm going to check all of the zip ties to see if I can just tighten them up and to see how much I need to, how much attention this thing is going to take. And another question, Jacob, is do you plan to put this on the shelf and admire it, or are you going to actually print something with it? I know you have other printers, at least I think you do. Do I have to scroll to watch this stuff? All right. Usually on these zip ties, people leave a little bit hanging out, and you can just tighten them a little bit. We use 1.5 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 2.5, and 3. So I'm just going to check all the screws. You know, this warp, it dries out, it gets moisture in it in the rainy season. So it's not the ideal thing for a 3D printer, but surprisingly enough, it's good enough. So usually you can get these things tuned where they print pretty well. And the funny thing too is, you know, people always grab the bot and they're like, you know, well, that moves around quite a bit. How's that work? Well, you're not doing that while it's printing. Always cracks me up when people do that. Just a few printed parts and you can improve the rigidity of these old bots. Pretty good. The one thing I really wish I would have done is put a printed piece up on top to keep the top more rigid. That really helps firm it up. So I've just got the bot laying on its side, and I'm going through every screw that I can see that's facing me from this angle. Pretty much every one is needed tightened. There's so many wooden parts. The belts are very loose. Now that I'm going to have to fix. Okay, so I'm going to have to retighten the belts because they're very loose. I think some people get to a certain point and they just give up. These old ones, for sure, you had to give them some attention. They required maintenance. But I see now that he's got the belts all the way tight, so there's no headroom to tighten it later. You know what I mean? They've stretched. Or they just didn't assemble it correctly. So all you have to do is cut that zip tie. Actually, I can do it on the other side. So I'm going to loosen these tensioner screws all the way, pull the belt tight from the back so that you have a little headroom to tighten. Where'd my cutters go? Well, it may not look like it, but we're getting pretty close to all I can do today. I guess I can sit here and do wiring if you want to watch me do wiring. Oh, interesting. Huh. I forgot I did that. There's so much that I've forgotten, it's ridiculous. So when you tighten this, this little piece on the back, it actually pinches the zip tie to keep it held in place. So you got to loosen the screw to remove it. So there's this little nub coming out the back, and we want, oh, you know what's funny? I look at some of these design things I did and forget that it was me that did it. And I'm like, that is really clever. I forgot I thought of that. That was a good idea. That's hilarious. Oh, sorry. I'm amusing myself. I've got really strong hands, so I actually tighten those things just with 2 fingers. I have tightened so many of these screws over the years. But I usually I don't like using, you know, we've got lots of these. But that is a surefire way to bust out the wood. Even on metal, you'll strip the wood, I mean the screw, if you're not careful. So I like to do everything by hand. Okay, so I'm holding this with a pair of pliers and just pulling on the belt to get it tight, and then I should have a little bit of headroom to be able to tension that. There we go. I have little zip tie guns like this. The guys use these a lot. I got out of the practice. They shoot across the room. I actually was using this to get a zip tie off one time, and a zip tie hit me dead in the eyeball, scratched my eye, and I couldn't see but blurry for days. So those zip ties will hurt you. I didn't think you needed safety glasses when working on a 3D printer, but it's not a bad idea. Now I'm still getting some sag, so it's going to bug me. I don't think I can live with it. I think I'm going to have to redo the zip ties. Yeah, I just can't. I can't live with it. So new zip ties for you. I'm just going to cut all of these. What else? I can probably get this off without undoing the belt again. What's up, Thomas? Could you give the dual extrusion project another look? Yes, I actually ran across that today. I really want to see you give it a shot and try and get this project off the ground. I appreciate your patience with me, or for not being completely obvious that you're frustrated with me on that. But yes, I actually have a client that's doing cell phone cases, trying to get into local stores. And so we have some interest for the dual now, and it's like a paying customer that really wants to do dual color printing. So I ran across it today. I'll get it out, and we will revisit that sucker for sure. I've actually got a guy here, one of my assembler guys, Gabriel. He's taken the lead on the cell phone case project, and he's a really good builder, and he will love him some dual color printing. All right. So Thomas, yeah, I think you gave me a link before. So I need to look up what you were doing. So if you want me to do the same thing you're doing, if you are doing something, I think you're the one. By the way, Jacob says, eye condition stuff isn't a touchy subject for me. It's just complicated to explain. I understand. So, thanks for that, Jacob. But anyway, some sort of a partial sight. Actually, one of my builders has in fact, the same guy, Gabriel. He has, sometimes one of his eyes acts up, and he has trouble with vision in one eye. But it doesn't mean you can't build 3D printers, that's for sure. He's really good at it. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm going through and taking these off. These are actually kind of dirty. I should go get some oil. I'll oil these up. They're just dusty. Now, I seem to remember that it matters which way you put these zip ties in, so I think you're about to see me do it the wrong way. And then I think as long as I keep the zip ties in the back here, I'll be okay. So I'm going to thread 4 through, 2 for each bearing. I realize this has no like instructional value, but gives me a reason to hang out with some of you guys. Because we don't build these anymore. Of course, the files are open source. They're still out there. One guy at Maker Faire brought up, he got, I think it was 6, or maybe it was 4 millimeter rods. I think it was 4 millimeter rods. He half-sized the whole printer. And he made this tiny little printer, the NEMA 10s. And it was the cutest Printrbot you've ever seen. He wanted to get me to like produce them or something. I don't know. People give me weird ideas sometimes. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. You do it. I'm done with those wood ones. Not making them anymore. Even though that one's really cute, it would take me so long to source all the stuff. And then I have hundreds of bars. What if they don't sell? Yada, yada, yada. All right, so now that is, I'll get this secured, and then I'll use my zip tie gun. I'm a little scared that might be too strong for some of this. But believe me, it will make a huge difference in the rigidity of this poor little dude. I don't know if I can get in there. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Well, I finally made good. I said a long time ago, maybe I'll get some old bots out and just rebuild them. And I never did. Today's the day. Well, that one is hard to reach. Maybe upside down. Oh, rock solid now. Oh man, the difference. Look at the difference. This one, I don't know if you see that, but it has lots of wobble. This one, like the whole bot moves. That makes a huge difference. So I'll cut these bottom ones off. Jacob, you said your students want to see it. That'll be cool. You got to tell them I said hi. Here's a question from Sean Wood, not related to this specific, that's fine. But I'm having an issue with my Simple Pro over extruding when printing from a cloud slice print. Where should I start? I can connect via USB and tune it out that way, but the cloud is right darn convenient. Over extruding with the cloud. You know what? I will contact my programmer and ask him that very question. I've seen it before. Is it a G-code or is it the slice? I mean, the slice that's being prepared in the cloud. Offhand, I don't know, but I've had it happen. So I wonder if something's wonky. But I'll write him tonight and ask him. He lives local. I could use about 10 programmers to get that cloud all dialed in. It's funny, Amazon is constantly moving target, and every time I get something from Amazon, I'm always, because we have the cloud service on Amazon, and we use various services, and we're trying new things to try to get the wait times down and stuff. But every time I get something from Amazon, I always panic, like, what's going on? Did we not pay our bill? What's going on? I'm like, is this... They're moving services. They're discontinuing this service. They reach out to try to upsell me on some service, and I don't make any sense of all of it. So I'm always forwarding this stuff to my programmer. He's like, Brook, we're fine. So anyway, I can't blame Amazon. I'm sure it's... if it's happened to you and me, then it's a thing. But... I wonder, what you should try is changing the settings. Like if you're on standard setting, go to low resolution. If you're on light infill, go to a different infill. See if you can test those one at a time with something small like a 20 millimeter cube and see if you can nail down, help me troubleshoot it. Is it a certain infill setting? Is it a raft or, one of the settings? Is it a setting that's bad in there and you just happen to use that setting? Because I was using it today with standard infill, and that's 0.1, the standard resolution and standard infill. And it worked great. Yeah, I was doing Adopt-A-Bot stuff. Just loaded it up to the cloud, and I have I have 5 all lined up in a row. It's funny that doesn't exactly work every time. Had 5 of them lined up, printing parts for the Adopt-A-Bot. I had a pretty big release on the Adopt-A-Bot, and then released it because I said I would, and made sure I was clear in the description, hey people, this is beta. And then I got it back out and did a whole bunch more changes. So I think I'm going to wear out my beta testers when they see that, well, you're going to have to print a bunch more because I got some better ideas. I've been doing so much design lately. So many things swirling, but I'm having a good time. the Adopt-A-Bot, I have to give a couple of the kits to a guy that's going to India. He's actually 4th generation Gandhi. Yogi Gandhi. Anyway, he wanted to check him out to bring the Adopt-A-Bot to India. And so he's like, can I have a couple of kits to take with me on Sunday? Because he's flying in on Sunday. So it kind of lit a fire under my butt to like get the whole vision realized very quickly. So I could show it to you. It's in the other room. But it is so, the main thing about the Adopt-A-Bot that's always bugged me is like this one. If you don't build it just right, oh, that's funny, it broke. If you don't build the Adopt-A-Bot just right, it ain't going to be very sturdy. So I thought, and it was really, you know, my design. It was simple and not a bad first thing for a kid to do. But then I thought, you know what? With a bunch of design changes, I can make this much more sturdy. So that's what I did. More hardware, everything cinches around bars and bearings and everything. A little bit of a different look and feel, but mainly it's just so much more rigid, and it worked because I was assembling it before I started this. Works really well. All right. Oh, night and day. Night and day. All right, so that's only 4 bearings, though. There's 4 more if I'm going to do it right. Actually, there's a bunch more. Oh, that's funny. I just noticed this is a sprung bed. I get used to that auto bed leveling. I forget that's how we used to do things. Spring the bed. And look how canted this bed is. It's like going downhill like major. Well, it's because he didn't have his, these weren't tight. Okay, so I did those. Now I need to do these. Oh, much harder to reach. That won't be bad. This is the one that's bad. Yikes. That's a pain. Well, haven't run out of battery yet. It's the slice prepared in the cloud. I hear you. So yeah, I wonder if you change settings, if that will fix it. All right, I'm committed. I took them all off. But when you do that, you really have to take these off as well. Which, you know, is what it is. If you're going to do something, do it right. Now we're going to have screws going everywhere. Or, not screws, it's nuts. Whoops. Are you free yet? Man, I hope this wasn't glued. That is tight. The wood fits in there quite tight. There it goes. All right, so this allows me to get in there with some, what's going on here? Okay. There's the nuts. They're starting to fall. All right, that gives me enough access to get these. But before I do that, I'll get this side done. Oh man, I'm probably boring the snot out of some of you people. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, run through some of those settings and see if it all does the same thing. Normally I ask people to send me a G-code, but that's going to be difficult. But you can at least send me the file to see if I get the same results. But I would want to know what settings you're using and see if it's something with the cloud or is it something else. Doggone it. That one broke too. I think the sharpness of the wood, it's really turning the corner sharply. That's why sometimes these zip tie guns aren't ideal. They can pull so hard it'll just separate. The plastic itself actually severs. Doggone it. This one might be a hand-tight job. I used to count out these zip ties and like, okay, I'm going to give you 47 zip ties. And then after you put some together, you're like, oh, screw it, throw in the whole bag. They're going to need them. These could just be, I don't know what they're made of, but I know there's varying degrees of zip ties. Some of the cheap ones aren't worth their weight. All right, we're just going to hand tighten these. I'll be able to get them plenty tight. I'm a little bummed I can't find that piece of wood. I thought maybe I dumped it out of the box when I was... There we go. Okay, one side's done. But no, it wasn't on the ground. I couldn't find anything on the ground, so I just have to print a new part. In this case, I'm glad it's a spring coupler. All right, I guess I'll go this way. If you turn the nub of the zip tie around, come on. If you turn the nub of the zip tie around here, you run into problems because everything is so tightly designed. I know I've created all kinds of problems for myself in a lot of my designs because I don't leave myself any room. If there's a millimeter to be spared, and really it's all about trying to eke out the most build volume that you can, because it drives me nuts when you read the specs of a printer and they say, you know, 6.3923 inches build volume. Drives me nuts. It just means you're lazy. If you should design the spec, it should be a 4x4 inch or 100 by 100 inch or 100 by 100 millimeter printer. You didn't do your design right if you ended up with 0.7392. So anyway, I guess if you're using stock length bars, your design can really affect the ultimate outcome of your build volume, but you know, take some more time and do it. So anyway, always drives me nuts. So I would always design the most build volume out of the shortest bars, or you know, whatever length the bars were. I'd really work hard to make sure I'm getting the most build volume out of it. And I really like the smallest amount of footprint on your desk. As you can see, this is a very small printer, but just like the Adoptabot, but you know, you do sacrifice some things when you're small. And one of them is it's harder to build because, you know, your hand, I got fairly large, I don't know. My hands are normal, but I feel like my thumb is really big and it gets in the way a lot. But anyway, so when on these small bots, it's hard to get in there. The worst case, the hardest bot to build at Printrbot that there ever was is actually the play, because that gantry, we used all these custom injection molded stuff that we designed, and man, that was a bear, because there just was not room. Oh, here we go. I made a mistake, but I might be able to fix it. Yeah. That's one of those places where it's so tight with the zip ties. I was talking about it at exactly the right time, because if you don't turn them, it interferes with this. So I'm just going to put the wood back in. I haven't got my nuts in their little slots yet, but this is going to hold it up out of the way for me. That's weird. What's that catching on? There we go. This was angled. Oh, I see, yeah. Just needs to be tightened. Okay. Now I got this bottom. I didn't do the bottom yet, did I? Did I do the bottom? Yeah, but I think I broke that one and didn't notice it. Okay, we'll do hand tight. Originally, when I did the early designs, I wanted it to be easy to build, right? And so you'd call that design for manufacturing, or, you know, ease in building. That really mattered to me. I wanted to be able to build it in 45 minutes. And I could do my original one in 45 minutes and get it to move, and probably not calibrated, but, and I said that, and I had people call me a liar. You're lying, that's impossible. These took more time because there's more parts. Okay, let's see if I can find all my screws now. Here's one. I need one more. Where'd you go? There it is. But where are the nuts? There's one. There's two. Okay, I got everything. So I'm putting the Z back together. Yeah, that's good. I just get it loose at first, you know, I don't tighten one thing down until they're all started and everything's playing nice. Then I can tighten them down. I inadvertently loosened the motor here. Motor has 4 screws, doesn't really need 4 screws. I've built a lot of printers with 2 screws, one on each diagonal from each other. Oh, I am missing that nut. So there's another nut around here besides me. Whoops. Where'd the nut go? All right. I have very little patience looking for parts that I lose, because I lose crap all the time. Here's one. That's one of those areas that I'll need a little help from needle nose. All right. Tightening. Tightening. There we go. Now she's tight. Huh. Okay. Where'd that bar go? Feels good. Well, I have it, you know, easy to access. So I just wanted to see if everything's tight. Why did you use such a big motor on a tiny machine? Well, this one used smaller motors. NEMA 17, I knew I was going to build all mine with NEMA 17. And when you go to buy from China and you're buying, man, what did we buy? We would buy them, you know, 4, 5, 6,000 at a time. And you don't want to buy two kinds. You want to eventually, I would buy everything I get my hands on for a long time. I remember I would buy them from everywhere. Anywhere I could find motors, I would buy motors because I was building so many and it was hard to find enough. You know, I would kill the supply chain. Sam Kai-san, I call him Sam, I forget his, Sam Wong or something like that. He drove up one night to my, he was the sales guy. He ran, I don't know what the name of the company was, I forget, but he imported motors and he was giving them to, in the Bay. And he was doing motors to 3D Systems and MakerBot. He sold motors to Bree from MakerBot and back in the day, and he'd do all these motors. And you know, we were friendly. He drove up one night. I'm working late trying to get my Kickstarter shipped, and you know, it's evening, and he shows up in his van, just like a family van. And you know, he talks to me and is like, "Oh, I want to be your supplier for motors." And I'm like, "Really? Well, do you have good prices?" And he's like, "Yeah." I didn't know what good prices were. Nobody was sharing with me their source. I made a lot of people mad when the Kickstarter went so well because, you know, there's other people doing businesses making 3D printers and they didn't like that I, you know, got such a big start. And so I would ask people, where do you get your source? Well, I'm not telling you, that's private information, you know, all that. And I've always shared everything with everyone. I don't care if somebody knows. I mean, if you do a little homework and get Google out, you'll be able to find. But this was a little harder at this time. But anyway, so Sam did a deal with me, and you know, he got me a lot of motors, and he was shipping them over, and I was buying them. To keep the cost down, you want to buy the same motor. So eventually, I just settled on one motor, and because I had large machines and small machines, I told him I want the most torque I can get in a motor, and he was like, "Oh, those are a little more expensive." I didn't care. I wanted the best. I say the best. I don't know if you'd call Kai-san the best, but you know, Chinese motors vary in quality, they vary in specs, they vary in all kinds of stuff. And it's a kind of a dizzying array of options you can get in a motor. It's funny, you contact a factory in China and I say, "Okay, yeah, I want your best price on a NEMA 17 motor, this much, you know, torque." And there's like, "Oh, what price do you want?" I'm like, "Wait a minute, aren't you supposed to tell me what price?" "Oh, what features do you want?" So I want a D shaft. I didn't do that in the beginning, wish I would have. I love the D shaft because it makes it easier, and with the set screws and whatnot. And anyway, I'd list off some features, and they'd say, "Okay, this is the price." "Well, wait, I want to add this length and change that and all that." And so what does that drive the price up to? And they'd always say, "Same price, same price." I'm like, "How do you do the same price?" And then I figured it out. Like, they were quoting me a price that had tons of margin in it. So I wasn't getting a great deal on these motors. I wasn't getting the bottom dollar deal. They had enough room so they could make it whatever features I wanted. But anyway, so Sam ended up making a lot of money off me. I mean, I probably ordered, well, whatever, 4 times. I remember at one time I counted and it was 300,000 motors. And I mean, I'm in a warehouse. I mean, I'm just in Lincoln, California. It's not anything fancy here, and you wouldn't know we were here. There's no sign on the door. I don't, you know, it's very plain. And it's hot out there in the summer. It's starting to get hot now. And it's cold in the winter. And so I started throwing up stacks of these motors. You've probably seen pictures. I would stack these motors, you know, 12 feet tall, these motor styrofoam boxes that they ship with. And they're all Kai-san motors, and I bet I could cover a football field with styrofoam. at one point. I threw a lot of it away because I got tired of it being around, but I always wanted to use it as insulation because it's, it would really help too, by the way. It would make it much cooler in here for the guys working. You know what? This is not working out. I think I'm going to have to get desperate here. But anyway, so I saw Sam, and business wasn't great. It's 3D printing has had its ups and downs, and so there's been times where I haven't sold a lot of printers. And he'd ask, "Oh, how are you doing? How are you doing?" We're doing fine. We're just downsizing and all that. And he would say, "Oh, haven't bought motors in a long time." And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's been a while, but I bought so many from you in the first place. I still have some of them." And he'd laugh, and he's like, "Oh, you bought so many motos." I don't mean to make fun of him at all. He's a great guy. But he says, "Oh, yeah, I bought a house on just your motors." I was like, "You bought a house?" He's like, "Yeah, new car. We took vacation." I was like, "Well, good for you, Sam." But anyway, now I go direct to the factory. So, and occasionally I order when I get in need or need something special. I'll order smaller units from Sam. But the reason I used big motors is because I bought a whole bunch of them. It's what I had. All right, now this is awesome. Way more rigid. Yeah. It's funny, this model actually has a place for the sensor. So I guess we were building one that could either do the sensor or the screw. Maybe I don't know what I did there, but all right, so we're all good to go. I think I'm ready to do a little wiring and then call it quits. So if you got any other questions, hit me up now. There's only a few of you in the chat room, so you've been very kind to put up with my rambling. What I do with the wiring is I first go through with zip ties and get them secured with zip ties, and then I'll put the, and you don't want to get them too tight, you don't want to put strain on anything, but I like them to be nice and neat. So I'll put that shroud around it here in a second. So this small printer, so it's only going to reach out that far. So I like to give it a little bit of room, like that. And then I'll put a zip tie here. And so I push all the extra wires down to the bottom. Since this one does mount underneath, I'll have to go through, I cut a bunch of holes in these things to get all the wire down where it needed to go. So I will have to rewire this, but the easiest way to do it is to first get all of your wires down to the back here, because they'll go in the back and down. So I'll do a little bit of wiring. So this will have to go all the way up, so I'm sure to get the right amount of wire on the back. I remember why I didn't have something going across here, because it'd be really hard to get something to clamp to that because there's no room in between the wood. You can still do it with metal, I guess. Yeah, I sacrificed a lot for a small size. Not sure that was the best idea, but that's what I did. All right, that's going to be plenty. So I'll zip tie there. Wouldn't half-height extruder work while removing mass? Well, a lot of people worry about mass. I have never really worried about moving mass. Now, here's why. All the people that worry about moving mass, I can print just as fast as they can. Now, that's probably not exactly true, But I will tell you that if you want a good looking print, I don't care what printer you have, 60 is pretty common, 60 millimeters a second. Now I know that some guys that really tweak their machines out can go 100, 150, whatever. It all gets lost. It's kind of like the CPU wars. You know, people would, I'm going to turn this, disconnect it. It's already disconnected. Unplug it. Then I got to start. You know what I'll do? Trying to decide. Anyway, with the speed, all 3D printing, I always joke, there's two speeds in 3D printing. There's slow and there's deathly slow, like really, really slow, because it's not fast. And if you go fast, you're going to fight all kinds of problems. So I choose to go at moderate speeds, 60 millimeters a second. Sometimes I push to 80, 100, but you sacrifice a lot. And if you have a failure 8 hours in because you're a fancy pants fast printer guy, you know, then I'll be 8 hours ahead of you because mine will finish right the first time and you'll be having to start a reprint. So anyway, some guys geek out on speed, I don't. Moving mass isn't that big of an issue. Sorry, I'm grabbing a marker. Oh, it is marked. Ooh, that's marked wrong. Okay, this is X, Y, Z, E. Can't really see that very well, but it'll be good enough. So I'll do the same here. X, Y, Z. And I know what those are. Okay. Get these wires properly routed now. So, I wonder what that was for. I don't know what that was for. We're definitely going to have some wires that are too long. Like I said, I'm tempted. I may do this. I don't know. I don't want to make any promises, Jacob, but I get a little bit anal retentive on this stuff. I just don't like it to look bad. So I could just cut these wires off. I've got crimping machines, and my wife's really good at it, and she could just re-crimp and rehouse. It just takes a lot of time. If I can get it to fit underneath here, I'll just leave it as is. You can geek out on your own wiring. It gets pretty tight to get all these wires through. I don't even know why I made a hole like that. I should have just made it a cutout. So you just lay the wires in. Oh well. Oh, look at this. What did they do there? Oh, I see. Never mind. All right, if you've got questions, we're going to wrap up pretty soon because yeah, I agree. Print slower, print better. If you're going to do it right and stop worrying about how fast everybody's going. It's not about the printer. Everybody used to say, oh, Ultimaker's the fastest. No, it's not. Yeah, they can be great machines. They're a little bit finicky. Some people have trouble with them. But you just have to know, whatever machine you have, you just have to know it. And you have to use it a lot to know it. And if you know your machine, you know what it can do. And you can get good results out of it. So stop worrying about keeping up with the Joneses and stuff. I know I'm lecturing now, sorry. But I tell people this all the time. It's like, stop worrying about that stuff. Like, how about you worry about what you're making? Stop worrying about the printer and how fast it goes and all that. This does become a hobby for some where the only thing that some people print are just other printers, period. That's the hobby. It's like and look at me, you know, I do that too, but I have projects going. I like to build stuff, but I don't want to print it twice. So you won't find me trying to push the speed. You will find me printing really ugly sometimes because I print with really large nozzles sometimes, because that dramatically increases the speed. Forget about weight. You slap a 2 millimeter, I know that sounds funny, but you can do it. Typically I'll use like a 1 millimeter, 1.2, 0.75, something like that. And you print with that and you'll get a taste of fast printing because it goes so fast. Things that took hours would only take, that's weird, what did I do that for? Hours turns into an hour. Sometimes, you know, things that used to take an hour would only take a few minutes with a really large nozzle. You just have to know whether or not you're printing it to have it look pretty, or you're doing it, I guess I'll add a zip tie there, or you're doing it to, oh, look at me. I put a little zip tie box there so I can tie this off. Either you're doing it to be mechanical and just work, maybe it's hidden. People won't even see it, so don't worry about it if it's ugly. If it works, it works. That's my philosophy anyway. But if it's shown to the public and you see it, I mean, you know, if it's, whoops. If people are going to look at it when you show them the print and it's on the outside, yeah, take your time, do a good job. But don't knock a guy because he has a printer printing at 15 millimeters a second. He might be doing, you know, ninja flex and he has to do that. Okay, well, that's not long enough, but that at least gives the, see how I did that? It's kind of nice. It's almost like a cutaway. I have some more of that stuff. I'll go find some. But now we can start to deal with all this mass of wires. Yeah, I might have to cut these down. Okay, so the board goes in with 4 screws. Which way does it go? It goes this way. I don't remember if I put standoffs on it or not, but I'm not going to today. Let's see if I can find. I bought so many screws and nuts and bolts and stuff. Gosh, I have so many of these. It's kind of a bummer when for these wooden ones, I was using, a lot of, I forget what it was. I think it was 16 millimeter. And so I bought so many 16 millimeter screws. Well, I stopped using those because when you go to metal, you don't need them that long. You're not going through 2 pieces of wood. And I have so many. It's embarrassing. And I think, you know, I'm sure I've been taken advantage of. The what is it? They gave me these blue bins. What's that company? Fastenal. Fastenal, some of the guys that had my Fastenal accounts, you know, we're real laid back here. They'd wander in, they'd take their notebook stuff. I'm like, you good? You good? Yeah, good. Until I found out some of the guys were literally just ordering, piling it up. I had pallets of this stuff. I was just paying for it because I wasn't paying attention to it. You know, my sourcing guy didn't have the numbers. He wasn't counting screws and, yeah, spent a lot of money on stuff I shouldn't have spent money on. And when I asked, can I get you to take some of this stuff back? They were like, no, that's special order stuff. We can't take that back. Pissed me off, but I guess I'll use it eventually. But they said, yeah, we fired that guy. Which was good. I mean, you don't want to upset all your customers. That's probably what happened. Is who knows? All right. I think it's it. I think it's all I can do until I get this piece. Looks like they sprung the back of this. That's weird. Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up until I am able to get that other piece cut. Some of this, I guess I will plug some of it in, but I think I'm gonna have to cut some of these wires. I don't know. What is that, thermistor? Now I remember how tight everything was in here. Okay. Thermistor, fan. Oops, I did it again. Plug the thermistor into the fan. The pins on these are a little bit bent, so I'm bending them back. Okay, one more time. Mr. Fan. Which one is this? I must have rubbed off the marker. That's why. Oops. Okay. E. Whoops. And heater. Z. Let's see, that's X. That must be Y. Bad handwriting. Sorry, I know I got quiet. I was just wearing down a little bit. Okay. I think that's Z. Okay, guys, before I go, X. Okay, that all worked out. Any last questions before I sign off? I may bundle some of that under there after all. It looks like I have more room than I thought. But it looks pretty good. I'm kind of tempted to go ahead and try it one last time. You know, you build, where is it? You go through this much trouble, sometimes when you don't check along the way, you realize you made a big mistake. And it doesn't work when you're done. So I like to know that it works. All right, I'm plugged in. I heard it power up. It's a little loppity because, there it goes. Okay, let's see. One last time. Connected fine. It's backwards. Settle down. Oh, no, it's not backwards. What was it getting caught on? Oh, I haven't tightened those belts yet. Here, let go, let go. Motor's off. Oh, I see what happened. There's a little screw in here that is used to trigger, and he had it all the way to the top. You're not supposed to have it all the way to the top. You want it to trigger. It was working a minute ago. Let's see, motor's off. Let's see if I plugged it in right. All looks good. I did kind of pinch that wire. Let me back off a little bit on these wires. See, the X comes up under the board, and I didn't really pay attention when I was putting this together to that X end stop. So it might be strained, or hopefully I didn't cut it. That's fine. We're good. We're good. Whoop, we're fine. We're good. Where did I put that? Okay, guys. So that works. Does Y work? Try one more time. Why? You know what I think it was? With everything so much tighter now, it's responding a little differently. I did want to move this down a little. Z. I have to look for some more of that. Hello, slow. Well, we've brought this little guy back to life. That's pretty exciting. Still a couple things to tighten, like the belts there at the front. That's no problem. And I'll get it shipped to you. I think you gave me your address, if he's still here. Nice to see I'm the only one that doesn't have these problems. Yeah, everything that you can do wrong with a 3D printer, I have done it. I guarantee. So what I did was I bent this is a non-standard, I don't even recognize this end stop, but I think once I got all of the wire and everything, and it's a lot more rigid now, it wasn't quite reaching the end stop, so I just bent it out a little bit. It was good. So the end stops all work. I raised it a little bit too high, but I think I'll be able to dramatically, go down a lot further. I keep misplacing that. In fact, real quick. My phone says it's about to die. I've had the camera plugged in. Yeah, it's in the email. Got it, Jacob. Might as well go all the way here because it's just a couple of things I have to do and then I really will be done. So I'll be able to ship this out tomorrow. And I know it's not a brand new kit, Jacob, but you know, me to you. Keep up the good work. Keep teaching those kids. Man, I forgot about that too. I forgot we had springs on all four corners. But yeah, this definitely needs new zip ties there. So, why not? These actually are okay. These seem tight, freshly replaced on the bottom. I can see somebody went through and tightened them. Because they're kind of, you can see the plastic kind of stretched. So they did that, but they didn't do the harder ones. That's why the bot probably wasn't running very good at all. They did it halfway. Okay, so those are good. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to unplug it. Oh, look at that. Oh, that wasn't for the... Oh, I see what I did. Okay. Now I remember that nut was not for... I mean, that the head of that screw was not for the... end stop. It was to hold those two pieces of wood together. So that's fine now. That's good. That's good. That's good. It's just these zip ties are horrible. Who would use zip ties to design a printer? That is ridiculous. Oh, I see what they did. Huh. I wonder if I did that on purpose. That's clever. Another discovery. There's a recess that kind of allows you to hide that zip tie. I just cut myself. Well, scratched myself with my own fingernail. Anyway, broke it. Broke another one. Broke the zip tie, not the wood. There was no zip tie on that zip tie. So I got a little overly aggressive there. I thought it would be somewhat entertaining just to see me go around in the dark. I told Jacob, I don't know if I have those. I don't know if I could build one. It certainly takes a while when you're just fumbling around in the dark here without, it's certainly not fresh. And here's how we're going to do the, you know, Jacob, I think it seemed like you wanted a kit, but I just couldn't bring myself to ship anything without knowing that all the parts were there and that it worked. So your kit will be already assembled. And if you want to put it together, just take it apart and put it back together. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just saying I'd feel a lot better knowing that it's going to work. Oh, that's so much better. Do this side. Man, I would do that different if I were designing this today. I would just do it very different. Maybe not very different, but somewhat different. Believe it or not, it's my first time to build on a live stream. I usually like to hide out and make all my mistakes without people seeing me do it. But why not? I figured we'd make an event of it and then I'd get it done. Otherwise, Jacob, the It would have taken me forever if I put it off. But I wanted to knock this little to-do item off because there's kids involved. Okay, cool. Now I don't want to tighten that belt before I get the bed on. Normally I would take this out and just on these refurbs, I'll sand them down just with a sander. But this looks extremely lightly used. What I think happened, I probably built this at least twice and given it away and it's come back to me. So it doesn't look like they did much printing because there's not, I mean, you just don't see anything wrong with it except that it just wasn't very well put together. Yeah, I probably did give this away as a kit and a kid built it at Berkeley. But I'm not a guy to, I have a bunch of printers. It's a mess right now, but I have a bunch of printers, but I've designed about 40 different ones. And I only say that to get this point across. I don't want 40 printers. I don't think anybody should have 40 printers. And yeah, so I don't keep every model that I've designed. I give them away, and who needs 40 printers? Well, oh, that's okay, that's fine. So now we go through the dance of springs and screws. Like I said, I'll just get it started. I like to run these really tight because it actually adds a little bit to the rigidity of that x-axis. And I'm going to be pulling on that belt. I'd actually like it pretty well locked down, and then I'll leave the fine. And plus when it travels, you know, you want it to be pretty sturdy. Oh, I think I just put it on backwards. Awesome. These are offset. This is one of those parts. It's not symmetrical. See how it's sticking out over the front? We don't want that. Okay, let's try that again. I guess I could have flipped it. Yeah, that's better. Okay, just a few threads to hold it in place. Get the spring in there. Very good. Oh, there's the missing nut. Couldn't find earlier. Oh, by the way, I'll mention this Thursday when I do the show. But we are going to make these shirts. People have been asking. And yes, we will make simple shirts. I'm thinking about doing a whole series, because now we're printing our own just for fun, because I've always wanted to. And we can make as many designs as we want. So I might do one of the wooden ones in a drawing. Definitely do the simple. That's been the biggest seller over the years. The metal simple, the shirt that I wear all the time. So you'll have to forgive me on. I got a bunch of shirts I want to go through before I order new sizes. So I'll do some other colors and stuff too. I like bright colors. Believe it or not, I know I wear a lot of black and gray, but in the summer, I like bright colors, so I want to get some orange, some happy colors. Now is where I think I will resort to the drill. So I'm leaving a little bit of play. Whew, that drill's burned out. All right. I'm just going to tighten it down pretty good for travel. So Jacob, you'll have to futz with the bed leveling. It's manual. Okay. There we go. Well, I had a good time hanging out with you guys. Thanks for watching. Beats standing here all alone in a dark shop, doing it all by your lonesome. And I'm glad Jacob got to see some of this. So let's see. He will be using it. Success. Yeah, it all works. I'll tell you what. I'll throw in a sensor because it does have a hole for that. If you want to add that later. I guess I could swap out the board, but that Rev D works so good. I want to leave it the way it is since it does work. I'll finish the wire management and laser cut that side. It'll get a lot more rigid with that side in place, although it's surprisingly rigid now. But it feels really good. So anyway, well, guys, thanks a lot. I'll still see you on Thursday, but have a good night, and you guys have been great. So we'll catch you later. There it was, building the Simple. I think it's a 1405. I don't even know. I gotta look that up. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Oh, can you sign it for me? Sure. Where'd I put the marker? Where is marker? Yeah, I usually sign it on the side here. Well, that kind of... I'll sign it in a couple places because this didn't come off. I need a thicker marker. What's the date? April 3rd. January, February, March, April. 4, 3, 18. All right. There you go, Jacob. If I can get that part done tomorrow, I will ship it tomorrow. Okay? All right. You got 4 of them. It's a 1405? Okay, cool. I did sign it. I might sign it on the bottom too, just in case that weenie little marker doesn't do it for you. It's just kind of thin. What's this one? Oh. All right, guys, for real. I'm out. Take care. I got to figure out how to turn all this stuff off. I literally don't know how to do this. That's hilarious. Okay, here we go. We are out. Oh, slide.